What you're going to learn is going to make you a better thinker, a better communicator, and a much better copywriter. Please join me in welcoming Michael Masterson.
That was a very nice introduction by Katie. There were two mistakes, though.
I still have the microphone.
One, Agora is not a $400 million company. It's a $670 million company.
Wow.
And moving up towards $1 billion very quickly, thanks greatly to the package that Mike Palmer wrote recently, that you had the privilege of hearing about. The other correction is that Katie said that this is going to be my last appearance. In fact, I want to set the record straight. I don't know if Dan is here, but I promised Dan Kennedy when I spoke at his conference several months ago that that would be my last conference, and that's what I told those people, and it was. Tonight, I'm speaking to you posthumously. Michael Masterson is gone. We don't know where he went. You know, he climbed Mount Kilimanjaro once, and rumor has it that he's off climbing Mount Everest. Whether he comes back or not, who will know? But right now, he has decided to return. People have asked me about why I decided to retire. I mean, I'm retiring the Michael Masterson name. You know, this has been a pen name of mine I've used ever since Katie and Don and Paul started Early to Rise. They actually started the business because I was encouraging them to start their own business. I said, now that you all have good incomes from your copywriting and your various, Katie was working as an employee. I said, you really got to start your own business because that's the way you get wealthy in the world. And so they started Early to Rise, and they wanted me to get involved, but I didn't, I was already so busy, and that was during my second retirement, so I didn't want to commit to working full-time on it. So I said, well, you can use my story, and you can use my ideas, and I'm happy to consult, but I don't want to be, locked into it. So we'll do a Betty Crocker type of thing and come up with a name, and everything else will be the same, but the name will be different, so I won't get phone calls and be asked to speak and all that stuff. So they agreed to it, and Paul actually came up with the name, Michael Masterson, out of the blue. Since then, it's been like, people come up and they tell me why. I know why you picked Michael Masterson. It was because your son's name is Michael and you're the master, right? I said, no, really, that wasn't the reason. They don't believe it, But Paul can testify that that was how it began. And this project that was originally begun to make Paul and Don and Katie wealthy didn't do that, actually. They managed to become wealthy in their own way, but American Writers and Artists Institute became a business that was a labor of love. When I consult for other businesses, I'm very, very direct about what is the fastest way to make money, but somehow when I'm involved in it personally, I lose track and I focus on what I care about more, which is delivering the best service and products to our customers. I'm so amazed and grateful that anybody would buy anything from me, I think, that I feel like I have to provide them with my best possible efforts. So AWAI has always been a marginally profitable business, but it does employ 30 or so people, and it does provide a good living to them, and it provides a modest profit every year that Paul and Don and I go out and drink away by 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, but it's been a wonderful experience. I'm very proud of what they do and proud of the growth that has taken place over the years. And, more importantly, I'm really proud that it works. When we began AWAI, we would write sales letters to people saying we can turn, it doesn't matter what your experience is, we can teach you how to write copy. And in those early days, the trade magazines that Dan Kennedy mentioned the other day, that you guys, I guess, don't read much of, when they saw our sales letters, they were outraged, and there were editorials written about, how could this group from Florida claim that they could teach ordinary people to become copywriters. These were editorials written, of course, by copywriters. I don't remember the exact wording, but it was something like, we know that copywriters have been born, sprung full-blown from the Zeus of thigh of Zeus. We know that we have, we have these natural gifts that can't be replicated. And that was the attitude back then. That it was just geniuses, and successful copywriters walked around like geniuses, patting each other on the back and so on. And when I got into the fold, it was still like that, and I very much got into that too. I was patting myself on the back all the time. But in the course of teaching copywriters, which I had done by the time we started AWI for almost 20 years, I knew that ordinary people could learn copywriting. I knew that copywriting was a skill, a complicated skill, but a skill like any other skill, and that if you put your mind to it, you could learn how to do it and become a good copywriter. In fact, I mentored a number of people who had very little talent for writing. One of my finest accomplishments is a friend of mine that became a colleague that really was, barely literate. He could read and write, but mostly it was comics, and I don't think he ever put together a grammatical statement. But he was a naturally enthusiastic guy that wanted to make money, and he has a very successful business now. He makes millions of dollars a year, and he writes his own copy. And every time I see it, I cringe, but it works, I'm a big stickler with my writers for writing grammatically and correct punctuation. But, it doesn't matter. Most people don't pay any attention to that. And so that's one thing you don't have to worry about as a copywriter. But all the time when I was involved in writing copy, I was always trying to figure out what makes copy work, because I thought if I could figure out why some copy works better than others, that I would have a lifetime ticket to a good income. And so I've been kind of fascinated by that subject for 30 years now. And I've been writing about it, and I've been talking about it. A lot of people in our industry don't think it's possible to understand why copy works. It's magic. One person has his magic, another person has his magic, and there's no point in investigating it and analyzing it and tracking it and talking about it. But AWI was created because I believed, and then Katie and Paul and Don believed, that you could teach people these secrets. And I think you can, and I think the growth of, Agora, when I joined Agora, it was an $8 million company. And the first thing that Bill and I did, after Bill fixed the toilet at the time, he was responsible for being in charge of the company and fixing the toilet, talking about a humble guy. The first thing that we did was we hired about 6 or 7, maybe there was 8 people, young people and people my own age, to teach them how to be a copywriter. In fact, Don Mahoney was one of the original group. He was a lifelong friend of mine. And of that group of 8 people, I think all of them now are very successful copywriters, either employed by Agora or out on their own. And since then, Agora itself has taught, well over 200 copywriters that are all earning, 6 figures today. And AWI has done the same, countless. It's impossible to know. But I can tell you this, when we began AWA so many years ago, and we were getting pilloried by the trade press and very skeptical reviews by people, other copywriters in the industry, the main problem was how to find good copywriters. Every time that we would go to a business meeting, as marketers, after we would talk about what's hot, what's not, what products are working, there would be a long discussion on who the good copywriters were. And there seemed to be only about a dozen of them. And everybody was desperate to find good copywriters. And since then, the industry has grown enormously. You know, with the internet, it's gotten much bigger, and that's still the main question that people ask. But the difference now is that there are so many more people employed as copywriters in every area of the direct response business. And I almost never meet, and this is true, I almost never meet a copywriter. I probably meet 100 copywriters a year, new people, because when copywriters meet me, they know, who I am, and they tell me they're copywriters, and they tell me about their life and this or that. I ask them questions. And really, I don't remember the last time I met a copywriter who wasn't a graduate of AWAI. And that's the truth. Right. It's not always the first thing that they say, because there are some things, many of them have been maybe copywriting successfully for 6 or 8 years, and there are other things that they've done that they're more excited about more recently. They've done a successful package for Dan Kennedy or for Boardroom or whatnot, and they want to tell me about that. But if I keep asking them, I always find out that they did at what time take the AWA program. So the AWA program is really built around ideas. It's built around this one idea that you can analyze good copy, figure out the component parts, and then teach them. And during the course of this conference, when Katie began this conference, she said to you, that there's going to be a lot of doors opening. Remember she said that? And if you stay in the present, stay in the here and now, be aware of them, you're going to be able to take advantage of these doors, walk through these doors, and accrue some significant benefit to you. I really believe that deeply. I believe, in fact, I pushed Katie to put that in that speech. I believe that every day that we're alive, there are hundreds of opportunities that are available to us. There's more opportunity available. This whole idea of attraction, I don't like. If you've read my stuff, I think it's silly. But I think that the reason why attraction seems to work is that people don't understand that everything that they need is always around them, constantly around them. There's constant opportunities to go where you need to go. But most of us, because of just the difficulty of surviving probably high school, have learned to kind of close out as much stimulus as possible. But if you open yourself up, and that's what Katie asked you to do, amazing things can happen. I'm talking about ideas right now, and I'm talking about the power of ideas. Today, this week, there are 2 kinds of ideas that you've been exposed to. One type are ideas about how to become better businessmen as copywriters. Dan Kennedy gave a presentation on that subject yesterday and asked questions. And I never really spent much time thinking about that subject. It became a very important subject for AWAI, but I never was a freelance copywriter myself. I wrote my own copy for a business I was employed in. I leveraged that into becoming a partner, and then the rest of my career was working as a partner. But all I've ever done is be a copywriter. All I do is write. I don't take phone calls. I'm like Dan, I'm afraid to get in contact with people. I rarely go to meetings. When I go to meetings, I like to keep them to 10 minutes. I believe all meetings are like good basketball games. Everything happens in the last 2 or 3 minutes. But so what do? I write, I critique, and I send memos, and it's all copywriting. So my success really has come from the belief that I can learn to become a better writer by analyzing the qualities of good writing from other writers. And that's what AWAI is based on. And I believe this is so true. And if there's one belief that I could put into your souls and your heads right now that would make the biggest difference in your careers, I believe that is the one, that you can change your life by accepting a single idea. And I'll give you one example, which is Mike Palmer. Mike Palmer, you all remember Mike Palmer, right? Mike Palmer is the guy that wrote the most successful package in the history of our industry right now. It's a package that will generate it will generate, somebody said $100 million, it will generate over $200 million worth of sales without a doubt going forward. We already know this to be true. For Mike personally, it will generate him royalties well in excess of $1 million. If he's able to retroactively pay himself what he's going to pay the new copywriters, remember he told you that, then he's really going to get rich. But that one package, he said, was based on two ideas. Do you remember that? One of the ideas was this Ninja Turtle thing that I told him. And the other was this mystery thing that I knew that Michael, that's why I was at that speech. I kind of knew the Ninja Turtle thing. Obviously, I talked to him about it. I understood that. But I knew he was doing something else in that package, and I couldn't figure it out. And I came to that speech with the express purpose of trying to figure out, because I'd heard Michael make comments about other copy, and I knew that there was some other secret he had in his head, and I was greedy to find out what that was. And I do understand what Michael means by that striptease thing now. And I recognize it to be a very powerful copywriting truth. And I have no doubt that I will be able to make my partners and my clients tens of millions of dollars in the next year or two just employing that secret and working with their copywriters. So these things are just enormously powerful. You know, prior to that Ninja Turtle story, I had told Michael and Porter, just a year after that, or maybe even the first year, another story about a certain structure I noticed in breakthrough financial packages. This is one that was written by Gary North. I said, you know, he wrote a package once that had a big prediction of something that's going to happen in the economy that was tied to a future event that involved hundreds of millions of dollars that would result in a great investment opportunity. It was just a little formula. I was analyzing the piece, and I said, this is an interesting structure. And I gave it to Porter and Mike. And I tell you, for the next 3 years, every package that came out of their business had that structure in it. I mean, that identical structure. And that was a period of time when their business grew from $20 million to $80 or $90 million based on those packages. What was the difference? The difference to me, and the reason why their business has grown so quickly, is because that Michael really believes in the idea. He'll take an idea, he'll recognize a good idea, but he just embraces it and executes it beyond where anybody else is doing it. So, you know, you have been exposed to I don't know how many ideas. I know that I sat through Michael's presentation and Dan Kennedy's presentation. I came away with many more ideas than I could execute this year, and they were invaluable. Today I'm going to try to give you one more. This is an idea that I discovered when I started writing ETR in the, I guess it was about 12 or 13 years ago now, 12 years ago. I was writing, you know, essays. ETR started, Early to Rise started with an essay I was writing, I think, to Katie, who was coming into work. She had decided, well, this happens to a lot of my clients when they start running their own businesses. They decide that the first thing they decide is that you really don't have to get to work early. As long as your employees show up, you can kind of, you know, stroll in at 10 o'clock. And so, you know, I had felt that way once in my own career, and so I wrote a memo to Katie explaining to her why that's a terrible thing to do. And somehow, I don't know how that, there was that, and there was some other memo. That was the same. I kept sending it over and over again. And then finally, I guess, Paul or somebody said, you know, you should turn this into a business. And so that's how ETR was created. It was actually created by AWAI, where I was writing essays about whatever struck me, you know, whatever I was interested in. And I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. I've been interested in marketing. I've been interested in anything that has to do with self-improvement. And so I would write these essays. And one day I would wake up and I would have a very specific idea about, let's say, marketing. Like the idea I'm going to present to you today. Here's a secret, you know, the Ninja Turtle strategy for putting together hot ideas, or what have you. And I would write an essay on that. Another day I would get up and I would have just kind of an interesting story to tell. You know, something happened to me at the mall. And I would write an essay like that. because it had an interesting application, and that idea would lead to another idea, and it would kind of be a meandering essay that would go here and there, filled with what I thought were the most fascinating thoughts, which were whatever random thoughts were in my mind. I liked writing both of those types of essays, but the first one I liked because it gave me a sense of concentrated energy. You know, I had a secret to tell. I was very excited to tell it, and I wanted to get it out as quickly and as simply as I could. The second one excited me because it was such a pleasure, like simmering in my own smartness, you know. And I would let the readers just, you know, follow me around and in my, you know, almost like I was getting dressed, getting undressed, getting back dressed. Well, what could be more wonderful for them to just follow me around in the clothes closet of my mind? Several months after we started ETR, we had noticed that some of the essays that I wrote got a lot of reader response and also got a lot of sell-throughs when we had products to sell, insert advertisements, and some of them got no response at all. So being the you know, perpetual analyst that I am, I went back and I had them all organized from top to bottom, and then I reread all the essays, and I was trying to figure out, was there a commonality among the stronger essays and the weaker ones? What was it that made some strong and some weak? And I started by looking at all the things that were easy to analyze. What about the day they appeared? Could that have something to do with it? What about the time they were sent? What about the length? Then I studied the subject matter. But nothing seemed to stand out. I could see no unifying idea. So just before I was about to give up, I noticed that the headlines on the top 10, like 6 of them had one, the word one in it. The one marketing secret you should never forget, or the single stupidest thing I ever did. And so I thought, that's kind of interesting. And I read them over, and then I went back and read the bottom 10, and I realized that the top 10 all were essays where I focused on a single idea, single good idea. And then when I looked at the bottom essays, the bottom 10, I realized that those were all the essays where I gave people the pleasure of following my mind around. How many people here know what I mean by that kind of follow my mind around essay? They're just wonderful for writers to write. We love to write them, don't we? And we cannot believe that readers wouldn't love to read them. But it was a big insight for me. And so I started to think, well, you know, maybe, let's see what happens when I make that a rule. So I made it a rule for myself, and from then on I asked my editor, Judith Strauss, who's always been my editor, to make sure that I write my essays on just one topic. And it turned out it was a very difficult challenge. Because when you write an essay on just one idea, what happens is that you have to have a good idea. Right? If you're going to stop somebody and say, I've got something to tell you, it's very important, sit down. And then you have nothing important to tell them, that's very awkward, right? Whereas if you just say, hey, I'd like to talk to you, sit down, and you start meandering, talk about this and talk about that, you're happy, they're bored, you don't notice. So that was kind of the fundamental difference. And when you start to write about just one thing, boy, it's difficult. You have to come up with a good idea. And it became a challenge. I don't know whether it was then or not that I decided I wouldn't write every day. I would just write every 3 days or something. I didn't have that many good ideas, you know. Well, I warned them. When I started ETR, I said to them, I only have 10 ideas. I said, just go ahead. And, 3,000 essays later, I realized I had 15 ideas. It's part of the reason why I think it's time for me to retire. But I found it to be a very powerful discovery and a very helpful rule for my own writing. And what happened was when I stuck to that rule, ETR was much more responsive. And you could just see by the sales or the reader reaction that when I had my essays in, we had a lot of guest essays, we got a much bigger response. And it wasn't because it was me. It was because I had figured out how to write better. So I started to wonder if I could teach this to other people, and we started making it a rule at Early to Rise. If you want to get published, you have to go through what I call the rule of one, or the power of one. And I'll show you in a minute a couple examples. And I wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions and answers, because since I won't be writing as Michael Masterson anymore, and since I still have thousands of meandering, self-indulgent thoughts, I wanted to give us about 15 minutes where hopefully you could ask me about all of those things, and let me go off into the mountain with a happy feeling. But you know what? When I started teaching this to Agora, copywriters, Agora, mostly this is for editorial ideas when it began. I wasn't thinking beyond writing essays. But when I started teaching this, I started wondering, how far this might apply. One day I came across a list of the best-selling fiction books of all time. And this was the list. These are some of the biggest. Think and Grow Rich, 70 million copies have sold. A Message to Garcia. You people, has anybody read that? Message to Garcia? Very kind of wonderful, inspirational little book. What Would Jesus Do? The Purpose-Driven Life. Who Moved My Cheese? The Celestine Prophecy and The Happy Hooker. Well, I wish that weren't in the list, but it is. I have no idea how this fits into my theory. I'll have to go back and read it. But with the exception of The Happy Hooker, all of these books, and maybe this have this, you focused on one idea. They had, at its core, one idea. And then I started thinking about other best-selling books that I had read. And most of them lead with a single strong premise that people are excited by, that people find useful, and that people remember and talk about. The Road Less Traveled, remember that book by Scott Peck? You think of these great, even like the Celestine Prophecy. Although in the Celestine Prophecy there were X number of steps, the concept itself was pulled together by this idea that was contained in the story. So when I started this, I discovered this when I was halfway through my book writing career, and I'm still learning this now when I write books, and I realized that none of my books ever, although my books sold, my books have sold about 50,000 copies apiece, which is good enough to make the publisher happy, but they were never, 500,000 seller books. And I realized later on it was because I just never wrote a book that could even have a chance of being a bestseller book, because they were like, my books are really textbooks. They're, 180 things I want you to do tomorrow. They're not, they're not big idea. They're not books based on big ideas. But if I ever do want to write a best-selling book, this is how I'm going to do it. Then I started looking at promotions. These are some of the biggest, old-day promotions of all time. The secret of making people like you. It was one secret. Two men who really want to quit work someday. They had a secret answer. And, the rest of these, okay? These are all based on a single idea. Okay, so we started making this a rule at Early to Rise, that you would, when we got essays in, that we would run them through an editorial process that forced them to follow the rule of one. And what I found when we started, once I had this realization about the importance of the rule of one, what I found was that so many of the essays that we received for publication that I couldn't even bear to get through, I now realized what was wrong with them. And in 20 years of working with copywriters and other writers, I can tell you that there are three things that will make your writing weak. 90% of the copy I get that is not good copy suffers from one of three problems. This is the number one problem. That they don't focus on a single good idea. Because they don't focus on a single idea, they don't have a good idea. They have a bunch of mediocre ideas. That's the most powerful, energetic discovery about this truth, is that when you decide to focus on one idea, it forces you to come up with a good idea. And you have to face the fact that the ideas that you've been working with aren't good enough. This is going to be critical to the first process of writing strong sales letters, that you have to find an idea that's really good. You can't do it with a bunch of mediocre ideas. So we started asking people to, not asking them, at first we just started editing the work. I didn't tell you about the other two, did I? All right. Let me see if I can remember what they are. The other two are, the second one is a lack of specificity. Well, that's the third. Sorry. It's been a couple of years since I did this one. The second one is clarity of language. And clarity of language is attained. How do you make sure that your expression is clear and succinct and beautifully written? There's one easy way. I've talked about this before. I'm very disappointed. I may have to come back again. What? No adjectives. How do you eliminate adjectives? There's one simple thing you could do to make sure all your grammar is actionable, to make sure you don't have too many adjectives, to make sure you're using active voice, to make sure you're not putting in a bunch of junk. Read it out loud. You know, that'll help. But that won't make sure. There's one very simple thing you could do. All you have to do is this, and then it will make sure all your writing is. That's right, the FK score. The only thing you have to do is make sure that your FK score is below 7.5, and all those complicated stuff, all the style book stuff, you'll never have to read again. I've talked about this before, but I won't do it again. But it's absolutely true. Just keep your F score, FK, and you know what? When you write those long, meandering essays, when you write a promotion where you don't have a good idea, go check your FK score. I guarantee it's in the 8 5s and 9s. When you have something that's up there, it's not because you're more clever or you're smarter than other people. It's because you don't have a good idea. Okay? And then the third reason was specificity. That sometimes writers don't do enough research, that they don't know the details of what they're talking about. Those are the 3 keys to great writing of all kinds. Okay, so this will give you just a quick example, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but this is an essay that we got in. This is an essay written by, obviously, not a skilled writer at the time. Once I was in the workplace as an adult, I found myself having a hard time escaping the prison of working for someone else. Okay, I'm not quite sure what he means. The expression isn't good, but he's introducing an idea about being free to work for yourself. The first profitable business I began at this time in my life was a ballroom dance instruction business. The first thing I did was attend a training program each and every 9 months, which was given to me for free while I worked during the day as a collector repossessor at a major jewelry chain. Once I had begun working at the studio at night, while keeping my job, I realized I would never earn more than a little side cash. So I decided to start my own dance instruction business. You see what's going on? You're kind of lost. It seems kind of redundant. You don't know where he's getting to. But it goes on and on. So I'm looking at this piece. This happens to be a person I was mentoring, and so I couldn't just toss it aside and say, don't ever have this writer stuff on my desk again. I had to work with it. He discovered something. It goes on. Now he gets onto this new thing. He's talking about a place where he learned how to advertise. So now he's starting to talk about how he found an inexpensive way to advertise. Finally, this system works, and he could quit his job. And then he says it was based on 2 very important factors. The first I'd like to note is that I started the business with $20 in capital. The second important thing is I did that while maintaining my job. Well, he's kind of getting close to an idea, but he doesn't have a single strong idea. And as a consequence, this thing just meanders and meanders. Now he's got quotes. And then he's talking about his philosophy. Now he talks about his wife, Bianca, as she used it for the similar principle for her business. And then he gives these steps about how to be a chicken entrepreneur. I think I wrote a book on that. It's yet to be published. So this had 950 words and an FK score of 9.4. It was almost impossible to read, and I couldn't quite figure out what he meant. So I sent it back to him, and I explained this kind of rule of one, and then he sent in this. Have you ever heard of the term chicken entrepreneur? It's how multimillionaire businessman. This was an essay about me. The first essay was about me. Did you notice you didn't even know it was about me? Well, this one, it's how a multimillionaire businessman, Michael Masterson, describes himself. And note he sent me recently, he said, and then this thing, which was at the end, goes up front. A chicken entrepreneur is someone who keeps his day job while he gets his ideal job going at home in the evenings and on weekends, okay? So right now, we know that we have an idea, and it's right on top. So the reader knows what's at stake. He understands, and now he's going to try to, well, this is an idea that's, is interesting to any entrepreneur. It's always the big question, should I quit, should I leave? And so we know that this is going to be the topic of this essay. So he goes on, and he tells the story about his first attempt to get free from the slavery of working. But the story is much more succinct, and no backtracking. And then the rules. And the word count goes from 950 to 750, and the FK goes down to 7.9. And that's an essay that we published, and an essay that worked. I'll give you another one. Now, this is written by a very good writer, but I'll show you how not following the rule of one can lead him astray. We were shoe shopping. Now, don't get me wrong. I love my wife. We've been married for more than 30 years, and I love being with her. But I would rather have gum surgery than go shoe shopping with her. I don't mind shopping for latest fashions. In fact, I rather enjoy it. My wife has a great taste in clothes, and I get a kick out of the little fashion show she does as she tries on different shoes. But I draw the line at shoe shopping. She's going to hit every store at the mall, try on every single pair of shoes, and decide that she likes the first pair that she tried on 4 hours ago the best. Been there, done that, and don't want to go through it again. So there we were shoe shopping, and I was starting to fidget. She gave me the look. Any married man knows what that is. She said, if you're going to start shoe shopping, if you're going to start acting up, I won't continue the letter. But it goes on. At this point, I'm reading the letter, and I'm thinking, what? This is funny. It's an amusing anecdote, right? But why am I reading this letter? I'm a busy man, and yeah, I know, I get it, it's fun, but I've got stuff to do. What of value are you doing with me? But when this writer was writing this, he was loving it. He was in the zone, and they're going to love this. This is killer. Because he tried this out on his friends, occasionally talking about, I have gum surgery and go shoe shopping. And it's kind of funny, the shoe shopping experience from the man's point of view is very similar to that. So, but we don't really have an idea yet. And I was trying to figure out what the idea was. So in the second half of the essay, he gets to it. He tells a story about his wife got fidgety. She tells him to go off and do some prospecting for his resume business. So he goes off and he goes to other stores and he starts talking to people, and he ends up getting 2 cards from his resume business. And then he meets back with his wife, and they have a Cokes. And then she says, well, while I was there, I did some prospecting for you too, and she pulls out a wad of like 20 cards. And then, so now it's still amusing, still a great story, but I have no idea why I'm reading this piece. And I kind of don't believe it either, that his wife really could get the 20. But he then goes on to kind of deal with it, but now the thing is getting kind of long, and I'm lost, and I don't know why. And so it just goes on and on and on, okay? And the payoffs are working together. And so it was 960 words with 5.9 FK score, very low FK score, obviously good writer. He told a story that brought it down. But when we asked him to go back and keep it to a single idea and put the idea up front, it changed. And here's how it began. I've always believed the old saying that if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. A trip to the mall with my wife showed me how wrong this approach can be. You get it? Now the idea is on top. He has an idea, and now you know why you're reading it. You know what the value is. So now when he tells the shoe shopping story, you understand, well, as a writer, when he retold the shoe shopping story, he eliminated about 50% of it. There was a lot of redundancies in that story that you might not have noticed unless you were a professional editor. But they all disappeared. We didn't have to ask him to do that. They just dropped out because he knew now what he wanted to talk about. And he didn't talk about other things that his wife had done and other ways. He didn't talk, in this he doesn't even go on about how much he loves his wife, don't get me wrong, and all that stuff, because it was completely unnecessary. His object was to show people that sometimes it's better to have someone else do a job for you than to do it yourself. And so the whole story then boiled down to just that, and it went down to 475 words and an FK score of 4.6. And this story got a very strong response when we published it. Okay? So whether you're a beginning writer struggling with a very awkward draft or a good writer, employing this rule of one can be very effective, can improve your copy. When I teach the rule of one right now, I teach it this way. It's got to be, there are 5 components of it. I'm going to see if I can do this by memory. You have to have one idea, okay? And that idea has to incorporate in itself one big promise. So one good idea, one, let's call it a desirable promise. It has to have a promise built into it that your audience wants to benefit from. If you're talking about why sometimes you can't do everything best yourself, and you're talking to an entrepreneurial audience, most of them have wondered whether they're better off doing things themselves or delegating it. And so it's a useful topic, and when you say, when you have a lead like that that says, I used to believe this, but now I know it's not true, the benefit is there. The reader says, you know what? I'm about to be given proof on one side or the other of this argument. That's going to be useful to me. I want to understand that. So one good idea, one useful or desirable promise, conveyed, if possible, by one compelling story. We saw in the shoe shopping story, the shoe shopping essay, that story. That has throughout it one core emotion. This is important too. You know, we talk in discussions about copywriting about how important emotion is. We sell to the limbic brain, not the neocortical brain. We sell for, now Don Houtman doesn't like when we say this, but everybody in the business but Ayn Randians accept the fact that human beings make decisions primarily through their limbic brain, which is non-rational. So you've been taught over and over again how to sell to the emotions, not the logic. The logic part comes later, after people decide. After the lead, they already decided in their hearts they want to buy it, and then you give them the rational reasons for it. That's how most selling is done. But part of the rule of one is that stick to one emotion too. And by that I mean, let's just take the example of the essay we just saw on shoe shopping. He's got an idea about that's helpful to an entrepreneur about how to rely on other people. It's breaking through. So what is the emotion that he's trying to create? When I say emotion, what I mean is that you're trying to create in your reader an emotion that makes him available to the action you want him to take. Yeah, you want him to be open for sure. You want him to finally open up. It's something like that. Whatever that emotion is, we get the reader to say, you know, maybe you're right. Maybe it's okay to trust other people, right? Because the problem is that he doesn't trust other people. So the solution is to get him to kind of have this opening up feeling. So that's got to guide everything that's in that package. Now, the writer is a good writer, and that's why even in the beginning he had the right story. The story was humorous. A man and his wife, he's poking fun at himself, and this relaxes the reader. So he had the right story. The story, if a picture tells 1,000 words, you know, a good story can, well, a story is the 1,000 words, I suppose. I'll have to work on that. Anyway, a good story can be very powerful. So, so you can see that it's very important when you're writing, whatever you're writing, the sales letter, the lead to the sales letter, the first chapter of your book, an essay, what have you, that you understand the emotion that you're trying to create. And don't be waylaid into other emotional territory. And you will be waylaid if what you really want to do is to have everybody just follow your thinking as you meander along. The rule of one will keep you from doing that. And then the final element is that the piece has to direct the reader to one specific action or mental position. So one good idea, one implicit or stated promise, one, if possible, one story that conveys it, everything with one consistent emotion, and then finally leading to one action or state of mind that the writer knows beforehand he's directing the reader to. Okay? You know ahead of time when you're writing anything what the purpose is. As copywriters, you're going to want people to buy the subscription, buy the pills, whatever it is. That's the desired action. Okay? But sometimes when you're writing editorial pieces, and you guys will be writing them to establish yourself as experts and consultants, as Dan and Bob talked to you about, I'm sure. You'll be writing essays like this, and the point will be to have your readers decide this person is smart, or this person knows what they're talking about, or this person has a secret that I need to know. That last state of mind is more powerful than the first two. In terms of getting a direct response, you can understand that. If you can convey in an essay to your audience, your market, that you have a specific secret that you can give them that will help them. You know, after getting into the point where I was teaching people this, and I felt like I was really getting people to understand, I came across this short ad that Bob Bly wrote for ETR that I thought just did a great job showing how the rule of one works. This is how it was. It was a short little email. The subject line was, "The easiest product to sell online." Then it had this little lift note. It said, "Dear early to riser, would you be interested in investing $175 to make $20,727. That's exactly what Bob Bly just accomplished. See how he did it below and how easily you could do the same. Marianne Tribby, she was a former publisher for us. Then here's Bob's letter. Dear friend, there's no product easier to create or sell online than a simple, straightforward, instructional or how-to ebook. Why are ebooks the perfect information product to sell on the internet? 100% profit margin, no printing costs, no inventory to store, quick and easy to update, no shipping costs or delays, higher perceived value than regular books, quick, simple, and inexpensive to produce. My very first ebook has generated $20,727 in sales so far. My total investment in producing it, just $175. Now I want to show you how to make huge profits creating and selling simple ebooks in my new ebook, Writing Ebooks for Fun and Profit. Normally my ebooks sell for anywhere from $29 to $79, and later this year, Writing Ebooks for Fun and Profit will sell for $59. However, to make it affordable for you to get started in ebook publishing, I'm letting you have Writing eBooks with Fun and Profit for only $19 today, a savings of $40 off the cover price. For more information or to order on a risk-free 90-day trial basis, just click here below. Sincerely, Bob Bly. P.S. But I urge you to hurry. This special $40 discount is for a limited time only, and once it expires, it may never be repeated again. Okay, so let's go back and look at this in terms of the rule of one. The subject line is the easiest product to sell online. Could that be more singular? The single easiest product to sell online. I'm an online entrepreneur. I want to know what that is. This is not a subject line that's meant to mystify me, to confuse me. It's very straightforward and very simple. But it's something I want to hear about. In the first line, would you be interested in investing $175 to make $20,727? So what's that? That's the promise, right? That's a lead. That's a straightforward promise conveyed in a question. Of course, the answer is yes. Never ask a question in copy unless you know the answer. This, we can assume the answer is yes. That's exactly what Bob Bly just accomplished. Well, what do we have there? What's that? Who said that? Very impressed. Whoever said that. That's a story. What a beautiful story that is, huh? It's a one-sentence story, or two sentences if you count the first. The moment I read that, I was sold, because I knew Bob, and I knew that the sales letter was be factual, and I love the idea. I still love the idea, even though I consult with a $670 million company and another one that's 50 and another one's 20. There's nothing I get pleasure more than this kind of stuff. 175 to 20 kids, much more exciting to me. So I was like, sold. And Bob Bly just did it. I wanted to know what it was. So there's the story right there. So Bob's letter is, there's no product easier to create or sell online than a simple, straightforward, instructional or how-to ebook. There it is. He states it very clearly and precisely. That's his idea. And you know what? I found that idea entirely believable. It just, and think about the internet entrepreneurs, if you've been in that business or thought about it. There's so many complicated things that people, you've got subscription services, you've got webinars, you've got all these things that are big and complicated and difficult. And here Bob Bly comes along and says, listen, just sell an ebook. This is the way to go. So right away you have the idea presented, and it's also a statement, and it's also a promise in a way. The promise is ease, right? This is an easy way to make money. And then, but he goes on, why are ebooks a perfect information product to sell in the marketplace? So this is the big promise he made. Now he's going to prove it. We know that we always have to do that in our sales letters. We have to make a big promise, and we have to prove it. This is one promise, and these are the proofs that we just went through. And then he says, my very first ebook has generated $20,727 in sales so far. My total investment in producing it, $175. So this obviously was picked up in the left letter, but that's the story. There's no more elaborate than that. He didn't have to take you on a trip anywhere. He just did it minimally. And the rest of the package, now I want to show you how to make huge profits in creating and selling simple ebooks in my new ebook. Of course, he obviously was really excited about ebooks, because what did he do? His second ebook was an ebook about writing ebooks. This does tell you something about our industry, doesn't it? About all the gurus that proliferate our industry. And from then on, it's just a close. The sales letter is already done by then. It was an idea linked to a promise, expressed in a very simple story, a two-sentence story, that had this core emotion. Well, the emotion I had was, I was excited to finally have something simple that I believed I could do. You know, even in my current self, most of me, in my soul, is exactly the way you feel. I feel like, oh, this stuff is, even if some of my clients are doing, it's way too complicated. I don't want to even hear about it. I felt like when I read this, oh God, this is what I want to do. I'm going to stop doing everything and sell ebooks. Be so simple. So, and that's how I think the readers felt. So you had that beautiful emotion. And then the rest of this is just the action that he wants you to take. Buy my book and you'll be rolling, okay? Which is, we all know how to do that. But, 50% of the copy is just on the close. All the other beautiful stuff has been done in about 6 or 7 sentences. So to me, I was like thrilled to see this because it exemplified what I think of as the power of this secret. And this little piece that barely, took any space at all in ETR was very, very, it may have been the strongest thing of that type that we did all year. So I think it really is a powerful secret. So that is the rule of one, and as I say that before, to me this is one of the most important secrets I discovered about writing. For some of you it may seem ordinary. Bill Bonner reminded me after I had done all this work on it and spent 3 or 4 years teaching it. He said, isn't that what David Ogilvy was always saying? I go, no, what are you talking about? He just had the big idea. Yeah, maybe that's what he was talking about. But when I read David Ogilvy, he never explained what I discovered was that when you focus on just one idea, this amazing thing happens, which is that you have to force yourself to come up with a great idea, which of course, obviously, that's what he was all about. What's the greatest way to sell cigarettes? Well, let's put a man on a horse with a cowboy hat on. And it turned out to be a great idea. And all the other ideas, all the other ways you could sell cigarettes weren't as good as that one idea. And once you had that one idea, you knew exactly what to do. You knew the kind of horse, you knew the kind of landscape, you knew the actor that you needed. All that stuff came together. The story, the promise, it was all there because it was held together by this one great idea. So even though I didn't really invent it after all, I believe that in my generation I should deserve credit for reinventing this idea. So, in the future, if anybody mentions David Ogilvy's big idea, you could just say something like, well, that was pretty good, but you really have to read Michael Masterson on the subject, too. All right, so we have, amazingly, 20 minutes. I finished on time. So I'd like to answer all your questions. I know you have just dying to... questions, or if you just want to compliment me, whatever you want to do, I'm up here for you. So, any questions on the topic, the speech, or?
You said we get to compliment you. I do want to compliment you, Michael. I want to just say how much myself and I'm sure everybody in the room deeply appreciates not just the great ideas that you have, but the way you've changed our lives.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know I speak for those in this room and thousands of others. We have better marriages. We have more income. We have happier lives. We live better lifestyles because of what you've done. And I really
Stop right there,
it.
Joshua. The other night, a man came up to me, one of the attendees, and he said, I want to say that one of the things I most liked about reading your essays is that whenever you mention your wife, Kay, who, if you read my essays, it's Kay, he goes, you always have I can feel the twinkle in your eye, I can feel the love in your heart, and I want you to tell me how I could feel that way too. And I thought, oh my God, I haven't even written my speech on the rule of one yet. How am I going to explain, this? And but you know what? I was thinking about it, and I have an answer, and I'm going to tell you. As Joshua just implicated, there's no subject about which I won't be, take on the role of being an instant expert. So since you asked me, I'll give you the secret to being in love in your marriage. And that is that, it wasn't that, we do any special things, or that my wife is the most amazing person in the world, although of course she is. But what happened was I realized, this is true, I realized about 5 or 6 years into my marriage, things are taking their normal course. In the beginning of every marriage, you're both in love with each other, and you're off on a brand new adventure, and you're a sergeant in life, and she's a sergeant in life, and you're equals, and everything is great. And then 7 years later, she's a general, and you're still a sergeant. You don't know what happened. Well, that was going on, and, in the beginning, all the stuff that I thought she thought was really cute, like, leaving my underwear on the bathroom floor and, smoking cigars in the whatever room. Turns out it didn't amuse her at all. So I had all this, the normal experience that we all go through, and I was starting to think, oh man, maybe I made a mistake, maybe we weren't perfectly matched for each other, and so on. Maybe I shouldn't be grateful for finding out I wasn't as great as I thought I was. But then I realized, if I do this now and decide that I made a mistake or that this woman isn't the right woman for me, I'll just do it again and again. This is the cycle. And I realized I just had an opportunity to get rid of that thought for the rest of my life. And that's what I did. I just decided at that moment that I would never be unsatisfied with her again. The person she was the person I loved, and that was it. I wasn't going to ask for another thing. And that's the secret. So now you have that. Like the rule of one, you have to implement it. So, by the way, I want to thank Lori Appling and the Agora Travel ladies. I'm sure you've all seen them. They're all AWI Travel, who have let me into their little circle. We've had about 4 little cocktail parties where we discussed all these type of issues. They're all the age of the daughter I never had, and we've been having wonderful conversations. And I persuaded them that the most important things in life are the things that the Italians, who have had the greatest civilization in history and conquered the world and had the greatest art and the greatest wars and the greatest this and that, have ultimately, through evolution, decided what are the 3 most important things in life. And apparently, and you might want to write this down, the 3 most important things in life are good food, stylish clothes, and very cool sports cars. So, you may have been wandering around thinking Zen Buddhism, thinking, what's the ultimate, but these guys have been around much longer than we have. So what's going on? I think I'm walking you through the closet of my mind right now, aren't I? Does anybody have any questions?
If you have questions, just step to one of the 2 mics here and let's let him continue walking. It's great.
All right, I have a question. I'm curious if, so you're talking about this whole power of one. And I'm curious if you've looked at, because you have so much business experience in helping businesses, so have you seen that, how it maybe carries on to like a business, that you have this big idea of, do businesses sometimes get splintered too much, or is there the idea of having this one?
What's your name?
Cindy Sear.
Cindy. Hi, Cindy. I mean, this is a very big part of business, that, and it operates on 100 different levels. One level is that your business you can't be, as a business, everything to everyone. You have to constantly actually refine yourself. And the successful business partners I've worked with have known that. Bill Bonner is a great example. He is very reluctant about funding new enterprises that go beyond the core expertise of our business. You can't be great at everything. None of us can be great at everything, as that little essay about shoe shopping is concerned. So every business has its core strengths, and one may be the medium. How are you good at marketing? Is it direct mail? Is it internet marketing? If it is internet marketing, is it SEO, or is it through emails or some other? That whole thing is one area. The other is your product area. what area do you have expert knowledge in? In AWAI's case, they decided that they would build their business on the secrets of the most successful copywriters. And so that's what they did. And AWI has had a lot of competition, upstart competition over the years, and some good competition, but they've all disappeared pretty much now, except Dan still has a component, but he works with AWI. But that's because they decided to stick with their core expertise. So I do think in all my business experience, I think it's very, very important to try to stick to the rule of one. Recognize it's not that you're not going to do something else, but recognize that I'm going to be an expert at selling this kind of product in this kind of market with this type of USP and so on. And then do that. And my rule about moving away from the rule of one in business is only do it one dimension at a time. In other words, if I'm publishing a health newsletter, if I have a health publishing business and I'm publishing reports, health reports, a report on how to defeat cancer, a report on how to defeat heart disease, a report on how to defeat diabetes, and they've been going pretty well. And I want to create a new line of products. It would be okay for me to create a newsletter, and let's assume that I'm doing that all online, okay? It would be okay for me to create a health newsletter and sell it online, but it wouldn't be okay for me to go from there to creating a health newsletter and selling it through the mail, because that's 2 dimensions removed. Every time in business I've tried a new development in business that's 2 dimensions or more removed, I usually get killed. And I've seen this done over and over again, even with my clients. You just think that if you can do, if I can do this, what really happens is vanity. You become arrogant. You think that since I'm having success here, I could do everything, but you can't. The most common way that businesses collapse, even restaurants, is out of this arrogant idea that I could do more than one thing at a time. So do one thing, and then if you're going to expand, just do one dimension. Just take one step away from it. When you get that down, then take another step. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. Thank you very much. It's very helpful.
The three mortal sins of success in life are every year to stimulate Agora's publishers who are creating all this wonderful growth. When Bill and I retired from Agora, it was a $100 million business, and we were trying to get it beyond 100, and we couldn't figure out how to do that. So we decided we would keep it at 100 and just increase the profits and make things easier. So we brought our publishers together, and we said, that's what we're going to do. We don't want you to grow your business anymore. Keep it at 100. And in the next 10 years, it went from 100 to $670 million. So to help them, every year we get together, and Bill and I make a speech. And Bill's speech, the last speech, began with the words, we're in the worst industry in the world. And it ended with the phrase, and that's why I keep a loaded gun next to my bed. So if any of you know Bill, you know that he's Mr. Doom and Gloom. So that's how Bill encourages them. And then I encourage them by accusing them of some frailty. And the last time I told them that I didn't care how successful they were already committing one of these 3 mortal sins. Either they were arrogant, or they were stupid, or they were lazy. And I won't go into the whole subject now, but these are the 3 mortal sins of success. Stupid, you can fix very easily. You guys aren't going to be stupid. That's why you're here. Lazy, you can fix too. That's easy. But arrogance is hard to fix. And it keeps cropping up on you over and over again. And if you... never mind. Anyway, it's an ongoing thing. Yes? What's your name, please?
Hi, my name is Kim Grass.
Hi, Kim.
And I'm one of the beginning writers here, and I'm confused about emotion. I'm understanding that the one emotion issue, but from our coursework and that type of thing, my understanding was the reader comes in with certain emotions. But in listening to you, I'm understanding that you want us to create an emotion.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, look, when you're writing to, let's say you're going to write something about cancer, okay? You know that what you're going to be writing to an audience that has emotion, a certain kind of emotion. And what is that emotion, Kim?
Fear.
Fear, enormous amount of fear. So do you want to write a promotion that scares him? No. But this is the mistake that most beginning copywriters make. They think that, and this deserves, I understand why people are confused by this, so I'm glad I have a chance to clarify it. I hope we make it very clear in the AWI program. The emotion, the resident, Dan calls it the resident emotion, I think. The resident emotion that your prospect has is not the emotion that you want to create. Right. You want to create the antidote to that emotion. Okay. What's the antidote to being afraid of cancer? Hope. Every time I teach a client about health, I said, memorize these two words, new hope. If you want to understand how to be successful in the health area, new hope. That's what it's all about. Now you understand the core emotion that you have to create. If you can create new hope, you're a winner. Does that clarify it for you?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, Ann Kuffner. Thank you for reminding us of how important the FK score is this morning. But that brought to mind for me, having done quite a bit of writing, when I go back, I look at my sentences and chop them up and look wherever I can do that. But for certain types of writing, that's much more difficult. And I'd like your comments on, say, for instance, when you're doing financial writing or health writing that's much more technical, do you see the FK score as the same, or is it modified? And then also, when you're blogging, and the different types of writing that we do now, or advertorials that have a bit of a different approach. Would you comment on that?
And I'm very sympathetic to your question. And believe me, all my friends that consider themselves to be heady intellectuals are just appalled at me telling people to get their FK scores down. And Bill Bonner himself, the FK, whole secret of the FK didn't, of course, everything comes from me since David Ogilvy left. Arrogance. But it didn't come to me, but Steve Sugarwood, our best copywriter, I told you the story. He told a story about how when he started writing, I told him that he's got to keep his FK score down, and that will make him a great writer. Now, I probably didn't believe it entirely when I said it. I was just trying to create get an action. My goal was to get an action. I told him, made him a promise, blah, blah, blah. So, but he told a story about how he doubted what he said. He did all this research. He found out it was true. All our best writers had the lowest FK scores. And I was sitting next to Bill Bonner when he said that. And then he said, and do you know who has the two, he was talking to all the publishers, the two lowest FKs in the whole business? He said, it's Bill and Mark. Michael Masters. And Bill was like, his face just went like he got shot. To him, the worst thing was to have a... So part of it is, we associate, and this is a complete mistake, associating a low FK with low reading levels. It has nothing to do with that. It's clarity. Low FK means clarity. And here's the thing. I'm not going to let you off. There's no excuse in the world except if it's technical writing that is meant only to service machine-like people in machine-like situations. But in any kind of writing, even if it's technical, that's meant to persuade people, to encourage people, to enlighten people, any kind of writing that you will ever make a lot of money on, you should never, ever have an FK score of above 7.5. And now, there's one little exception. If it's 150 words and you have 6 medical terms in there, of course you're not going to. But let's just say for 1,000 words, I've never found any case where I couldn't bring the FK down easily. Now, I've written on the FK how to bring it down. You cannot bring your FK down by making the sentences smaller. This is a common mistake. This is what people that don't understand. The way you bring your FK score down, the number one way, you all know it now. How do you bring it down? Huh? Clarity. By following the rule of 1. If you follow the rule of 1, your FK score will go way down, and it won't be. Why will it go way down? Because all of that other clutter is gone. All of those adjectives are gone. All of those howevers, inasmuch as, are gone because all that crap is gone. You're just writing about one story. And what do you do with that one story? You have a story that illustrates it, that one idea. And the story, if it's told simply the way good stories should be, will have an average FK score of about 4.0, which will bring your average down. You may not know that, but this is true. This is the single best way, the most natural way. You can't take a piece that's clumsy and awkward and chop the sentences in half and get a good FK. It won't happen. You've probably experienced that. If you're having trouble getting your FK score down, it's not because your subject matter is complex. It's because either you don't have a you don't have a good idea, or you haven't implemented rule 1. If you do, the way I explained today, I guarantee you'll never have a problem with a 7.5.
And just quickly, out of curiosity, do we know what the FK score was for the End of America?
You know what? I don't know, but if it's more than 7.5, I'm going to be really embarrassed.
Actually, I ran it. I think, if I remember right, it's like 6.2.
Oh, was it? Okay, there you go.
Okay,
Hey, we're assumed by Mike Palmer. I mean, I don't think Mike is capable of. If you whipped him, I don't think he could get it above 7.5.
My question is asking you to address language in terms of what I call corporatese. There's a lot of words out there that I used to like and enjoy, things like engage, landscape, upstream, downstream, circle back, align, are we agreed, granular, drill down. And to me, it just creates an impenetrable wall of communication that I just live with every day at the moment. So I'm just would be curious or like to hear.
What's your name?
Andrea.
Andrea. So, Andrea, you're asking if I would join in your crusade to get rid of all these horrible corporate
No,
terms?
it's more about how corporations communicate with each other. They all seem to get into.
But I can answer the first question. I agree with you. I'd like to join. These words are, you know, these kind of words are, they kill the language. They don't have any vitality. And we have to, you know, that's just corporate words, legal words, and all these, you know, I have a whole list of them that I'm bugaboo about. And you really want to get rid of them in your writing. They will hurt your... The two things that you should, when you're going through your copy, that you could, this will make a big difference. Little technique is underline every word that's jargon of any sort, corporate jargon or legal jargon or even common parlance jargon, like, give me a word that everybody uses today. It's a stupid... Functional... Empowerment. Yeah, empowerment. That's one of my favorites. I hate that word. You know, it doesn't mean anything. And people think it means something, but it's actually so fuzzy. If you start to talk, I won't go. You see. I'm a member of your club. So I underline all the jargon and underline every cliche. And of course you're going to eliminate those words. But here's the secret: if you identify cliches and jargon, you're not identifying areas that should be eliminated. You're identifying areas that need to be illuminated. The reason we have jargon and cliches is because these things are very important. And one person at one time said the word the first time that gave illumination to this idea. But then it became so overused that it becomes the opposite. So when you identify those things in your writing, don't just try to get rid of them. Think about them more. Go deeper. Spend a little time and come up with new terminology that brings vitality back to the thought. Last question.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Akini.
Thank you.
I'm only going to say two things. First of all, to compliment you. Thank you very much for sharing your awesome wisdom and having that heart to share with many people all over the world.
Thank you.
I'm a testimonial. And the second thing is to give a testimonial to the power of one. I believe you actually brought it out 2 years ago at the ETR boot camp, where we're having a, you know, sort of after-event meeting, and you talked about clear thinking and everything. And I can tell you that that was what my takeaway 2 years ago, and I decided to apply it for every aspect of my life in terms of writing, business, my life. So, and I can tell you that my productivity has gone up by, 60%. I do things better because I'm clearly focused on the power of one. For any project I'm doing, any article I write, I just remember what Michael Masterson said: what are you trying to communicate? One idea, one emotion, one response. And that has worked a lot for me.
Well,
and so that's a testimonial to read that it's working.
Thank you very much. Yeah. All right, well, this is my, as I said, this is the posthumous appearance. I don't think if I come back again, I'll look more like a zombie than I do today. So I think this will be the last time. But again, I just want you to know that I really enjoyed being part of this community. All my ideas are, I've been published 12 books so far. There are at least 2 more that are coming out there, and then there are thousands of pages of essays that I'm going to give to my good friend Rich Sheffrin, who has a brilliant mind. And honestly, he's one of the very few people in the world I would trust with my ideas. So these ideas will still be floating out there for you. But if you want to find out what I'm currently doing, I'm writing a newsletter on investing under my real name, Mark Ford, and it's called the Palm Beach Letter. Why am I writing about investing? You may ask because if you've read ETR, you know that I always make fun of investors, and I say that you can't become wealthy by investing, because I want to actually tell investors that they can't become wealthy by investing and help them become wealthy anyway. So this is my goal, to see if I can to do this and not be executed by all my fellow publishers. And so if you're interested in that, you can find me at the Palm Beach Letter, all right? But anyway, thank you very much. Thanks for listening to me, and go on.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michael Masterson.
Thank you.